want to welcome you back from your lunch and your first day of new hire training. We're so happy to see you and to have you here today. I'm Karen Duke, Executive Director of HR. So I am so happy to put a face with a name because obviously I get to touch all of your paperwork, and so we're thrilled to have you. We're going to spend just a little bit of time together today talking about TTESS, which is our evaluation system here in Texas. And I think we're the only thing standing between them and the rest of their day, so that means I know that we need to probably hurry. But I want to introduce my colleague, Dr. Julie Doss. She's going to talk us through our TTESS session today, so I want to thank you for being here as well.
So I have been told, got to turn it on, I have to stand right here, which is going to be hard for me to do because I'm a wanderer. And so I give all of y'all permission that if I start to wonder, y'all just point me back over here because they're recording this for future colleagues that will come in. But like she said, I'm Julie Dawes. I'm the assistant principal at Mockingbird Elementary. This is one of my favorite things that I do every year. I love welcoming our new teachers to our family. Our theme this year is, about home, and so welcome. And I don't want you to be worried about this training. I know you're probably thinking, evaluation, that's the scariest part of my job. But I hope you leave today knowing how CISD views our evaluation system, how we want you to grow so that our kids can grow. So I'm hoping you leave here today with an overview of how we do our evaluation, but also with this piece that it is a really special experience that administrators have with our educators to help you grow. So let's get started. Our objectives today are to become familiar with the TTESS process. In just a minute, I'm going to give you a QR code that you can get on your phone so you can have a rubric in front of you as we're talking. Getting familiar with that rubric will be the very first thing that will help you with this process. I want you to move from the procedural to the conceptual understanding of how the domains, how the dimensions, how it's all interconnected and involved throughout the entire year, not just one lesson, but throughout the entire year. This is a process that has been based on best practices. When the TTESS was designed, it was designed by Texas educators, people just like you, so that it is relevant to you. And so just understand that this is research-based, and it is going to help you grow. There's your QR code. If you want to pull up that rubric on your phone or any device that you have, that website, teachfortexas.org, that is a great place for you to go. There are so many resources as you continue your learning with this. There will be copies of the rubric there. We're going to watch a couple of samples of some video lessons in a few minutes, but there's a whole bunch of different lessons that you can watch on there. Attached to the lessons would be sheets that show how that teacher was rated. It just gives you a good idea of what this looks like. Lots of resources there for you. The Texas teacher standards that you are evaluated on are what's on the board right now. Standard 1 is instructional planning and delivery. Standard 2 is knowledge of students and student learning. Standard 3 is content knowledge and expertise. Standard 4 is the learning environment. Standard 5 is data-driven practice. And Standard 6 is professional practices and responsibilities. These have been the standards that have been in place for Texas teachers since 2014. So your full appraisal is much, much more than a 45-minute, hour-long lesson that your administrator comes in and watches. It goes across the entire school year. You will have one formal evaluation a year, and it is at least 45 minutes long. Your evaluator will stay in that room with you until you wrap up your lesson. So keep that in mind. I had a very sweet first year teacher this past year, and she just kept going and going, and she would look over at me for a little bit like, when are you leaving? And I finally just had some grace, and I walked over and I said, if you finish, I will leave. And so she did. She wrapped it up. So keep that in mind. It has to be at least 45 minutes, but we want to see the entire lesson cycle. You will have 2 learning goals that you will work on with your administrator. One will be a personal goal, and the other will be professional. Professional is usually a school goal that the entire school is working on, but the personal goal is what you are wanting to work on. If you are a brand new teacher or brand new to a school, you are required to have a pre-conference with your administrator, but there's some autonomy there at different schools. Like at Mockingbird, we have a pre-conference with everybody. We want to talk to our teachers. We want to hear from them. We want to talk about their goals with them. But there might be something different at your campus. There will be a post-conference. It has to be done within 10 business days of that evaluation. And that's when you will go over your evaluation with your administrator. And at the very end of the year, it's usually April, not the very end of the year, you have your end of the year conference where you look at the year as a whole. You'll talk about that 45 to an hour lesson, your walkthroughs, your professional development, look at the whole picture and kind of wrap up the year with that conference that's at the very end of the year. Walkthroughs, typically we do 3 to 4 walkthroughs a year, and usually it's both of your administrators. If you're on a campus where there is an AP and a principal, one of those will be assigned to you as your evaluator, but you will probably see both of them throughout the year doing evaluations. Some of our secondary campuses have way more administrators than that, and so you might see several different faces coming through your room. What are we looking for? What are the elements that we are looking for? Those goals that we talk about in your pre-conference, they need to be aligned to state standards. Are students engaged? Are they interacting with the teacher? Are they interacting with each other? Are the activities that they are working on aligned with the goal of the lesson? Is it relevant to the students? Is the teacher showing that she or he has content knowledge of what is being taught? Are they checking for mastery? Are probing questions being used? Is there, do you see evidence that students are mastering what is being taught? And is there differentiation? All of those kids sitting in that classroom have different needs. Is the evaluator going to be able to see how you're differentiating your lessons? These are the effective elements that TTESS is looking for. I think I mentioned this earlier. The rubric was designed by educators just like you. When you look at the rubric, you have 4 big areas, 4 big domains. You have planning, instruction, the learning environment, and then your professional practices and responsibilities. Underneath each one of those domains are the dimensions that we are looking for. One thing I want to point out about this is when you do your formal evaluation, the planning, the instruction, and the learning environment is what is being observed during that evaluation. You will talk about the professional practices and the responsibilities at your end of the year summative conference. But for that block of time where your evaluator is in your classroom, it is those first 3 domains that they are looking at. This is what the rubric looks like. Like I said, the domain is instruction. The dimension is differentiation. There are descriptors under each of the performance levels, and they tell you exactly what your evaluator is looking for. Like I said, I would print out, if you wanted to, a rubric and just really get to know what is being looked for. As administrators are being trained to do this evaluation, we are told to look at proficient. Proficient is where we want you to be. And where do you see proficient up there? It's right in the middle. And I know there's nobody more competitive, more driven than a room full of educators. I know this because I'm one of you. And proficient, just looking at that, might not be where you feel like you are or where you strive to be. But that's where we will always go first. After we have collected the evidence, we will we'll start in proficient and see if we have evidence that fits there in proficient, because proficient is a rock star teacher. And I want you to understand that. That's where we want you to be, is right there, proficient. Then we will look and see, did they not meet all of that in proficient? And so then we would go to developing, and if needed to improvement needed. Or we'll go the other direction. Do we have evidence that shows that this teacher is accomplished or even distinguished? But we always start with proficient. That's what we're aiming for. That's what we want to see. Rockstar teacher, I want y'all to remember that, proficient. When you are looking at your rubric and you look at those descriptors, if you look at proficient, what is different from a proficient teacher to an accomplished or a distinguished? Who can just shout out what they see might be a difference? What separates a proficient lesson to an accomplished lesson? Yeah, it's way more student-centered. And not so much the teacher up in front of the classroom teaching the entire block. The more you move to that other side towards accomplished and distinguished, you're going to see that the kids are more involved in the learning. So that's one thing that y'all can remember. Learner outcomes. That is the whole reason we're here today. That is the whole reason we're in education, is what are the outcomes for our learners? What are they going to learn? How are they going to learn it? And as an evaluator, when we're in there, we're not only looking at teacher behaviors, but we're looking at student behaviors. We'll take evidence on what did the teacher say? What did the students say? What were the students learning? How are they interacting with each other? The behaviors of the teacher and the student both lead to the learner outcomes. And that is one of the things that we look for as we are evaluating you. The last time I was in the classroom, I've been an assistant principal. This will be my 5th year. The last evaluator that I had as a classroom teacher had the longest, most beautiful fingernails I've ever seen. And she would come in, and I think that she was able to type every single word I said and every kid said. And all I could hear was those nails typing. I still remember that. Thinking, goodness, she's catching every word I say. But we do go in and we try to transcribe everything that's going on, because we want to give you as fair of an evaluation as we can. And we're looking for, what does the teacher say? What does she do? What does the student say? What do they do? What are some of the visuals that are hanging around the room? Is there a chart that the teacher has pointed out? I've gotten up in the middle of evaluation and gone and taken a picture of that chart so I can refer back to it when I am typing later. And I've also taken time, like the mini lesson started at this time and the mini lesson ended at this time and small group instruction started at this time. I mean, there's lots of evidence that we are looking for as we are observing you teaching. It is essential that we have that evidence. I could never sit in front of one of my teachers and say, I am marking you as proficient if I can't say you're proficient because of this and this and this, and it matches that rubric. Or I couldn't move you from proficient, move you on up if I didn't have the evidence to support that. So that's why we type like crazy when we're in there. And I try to keep my fingernails quiet. So when do we collect evidence? We start at that pre-conference. That's when we start learning what that lesson is going to be like, because that is an opportunity for you to share with your evaluator. This is what we've been working on in the previous weeks, and I have a small group that's not getting it, so I'm going to be pulling them for some one-on-one work. Or I have a significant behavior problem and I want you to understand my system I have with him. I'm gathering evidence at that pre-conference, anything they can give me that's relevant to what I will see. I'm collecting evidence, of course, during that lesson by typing and transcribing and taking notes of what the teacher and the students say and do. And then after the lesson, even at the conference that we have, that we are required to have 10 days after you have that lesson, I'm collecting evidence at that time too, because I'm able to then ask you questions and you might fill in some gaps. Or so there's 3 different times when I get evidence on that one lesson that I watched. So the pre-conference. Remember I said that if you're a first-year teacher or new to a building, you'll for sure have a pre-conferences. But I feel like most of our schools do have that pre-conference. You can request it if your administrators don't think you're required to have one. But why would you think that conference is important, that pre-conference? Why don't you turn and talk to one of your neighbors? Like, what would be beneficial to having a pre-conference with the person that's going to do your evaluation? So y'all pretty much gave me these examples. Good job. So we're going to watch a couple of lessons. I pulled one, I think, from 4th grade and one from 7th grade. I typically, in the past, have not had elementary and secondary together, so I wanted y'all to see a little snippet of a lesson. And we're not going to watch the whole thing, but I want you to look through it through the lens if you were the evaluator. Like, what did the teacher say? What did the teacher do? What did the student say? What did the student do? Do you see any visuals hanging up? I don't want you to write anything down, but kind of keep in your mind, what evidence are you seeing as you watch a video? I think we're going to start with 4th grade.
Okay, so today we're going to read chapter 6. So we're going to continue our journey, and it's called The Plan. What do you think that's going to be about? If I were to infer what this chapter is going to be about based on what we read with chapter 5, Macy?
I think it's going to be about a plan. How they escape the island that they got marooned on.
Maybe they're going to escape the island they got marooned on. Okay, but did they get marooned on the island? No, who did though? Ben Gunn did. Okay, but what was the purpose of them going to the island?
To find the treasure.
To find the treasure, okay? Do you think the pirates are going to just leave without the treasure?
No.
No, right? That'd be like wishful thinking, right? Okay, so I'm going to read the next 2.5 pages aloud. Then you're going to read the rest of it, and then you're going to have some questions that you're going to do with your turn and talk with your partners. All right? So everyone should be on page 52. And remember, if there is a phrase that you don't understand, what can you refer to? The board, right? So if you need to interchange those words as we're going, then feel free to do that. All right. Is everyone ready? Logan, ready? Okay. So it says, the next morning I was awakened by the sound of loud voices. Flag of truce, I heard someone yell. Then, it's Silver. I got up and rubbed my eyes. Sure enough, 2 men stood just outside the stockade. One of them was waving a white cloth, and the other was Silver himself. Stay inside, said the captain. 10 to 1 says this is a trick. Then he shouted to the buccaneers, who goes there? Stand or we'll fire. Flag of truce, cried Silver. What do you want with your flag of truce? Captain Smollett shouted back. Captain Silver wishes to make terms, the other man called out. Captain Silver, said the captain. Don't know him. Who's he? John Silver answered. Me, sir. These poor lads have chosen me. Why does he say, don't know him? To the captain. You're going to have to infer a little bit. Who is the captain of the ship?
Captain Smollett.
Captain Smollett, okay? And he's saying, I don't know him. Who's he? What is he saying?
He, maybe that he doesn't know that everyone chose him to be captain.
Maybe not. And is captain to him an honorable term?
Yeah.
Yes. Does he think that Silver deserves that title?
No.
No, probably not, right? And what do you think it means when he says he wishes to make terms? Jazid?
Maybe he wants changes.
Maybe he wants changes. What do you think, Macy?
Maybe like new rules.
Maybe make new rules. Could it also mean maybe to negotiate?
Yeah.
Possibly, right? All right, ready? Captain, after your desertion, sir, they made me captain. We're willing to submit if we can come to terms and no bones about it. Captain Smollett agreed to meet with Silver, and only Silver. Silver threw his crutch over the fence, got a leg up, with great vigor and skill, climbed over the fence and dropped to the other side. Well now, he said, that was a good scare you gave us last night. We lost some men, but you mark me, Captain, it won't work twice, said Silver. We want that treasure and we'll have it. You would just as soon save your lives, I reckon. We want the map, so if you hand it over, we won't do you no harm. Not a chance, replied the captain. Give us the map, said Silver, and stop shooting poor seamen. If you do that, we'll give you a choice. You can come aboard with us once the treasure is stowed away, and I'll give you my word of honor to put you ashore somewhere safe. Or, if that ain't to your fancy, you can stay here. We'll divide the supplies with you, and I'll send the first ship I sight to pick you up. Is that all? Captain Smollett asked. Now hear me. If you come up one by one, unarmed, I'll clap you all in irons and take you home to a fair trial in England. If not, it won't end well for you. Silver looked scornfully at the captain. Give me a hand up, he cried. Not I, returned Captain Smollett. Who'll give me a hand up? Silver roared. Not one among us moved. Silver had to crawl along the sand. Okay, based on your perception of Silver, do you think he's being honest?
No.
Thumbs up or down?
So I'm not going to make you watch that whole lesson, but let's just do a little exercise. Just with the brief knowledge that you've been given so far this afternoon, I want you to give me a thumbs up. If you think she's above proficient, it would be a thumbs up. If you think she's proficient, kind of sideways, or below proficient, a thumbs down. So why don't you show me what you think? Interesting. I see mostly proficient. I didn't see one thumbs down, and I saw a thumbs up. Let me read a few. Remember I told you that on teachfortexas.org you can find this video and you can see the evidence below it and look and see the evidence that the evaluator got. But in 2.1, achieving expectations, the rubric scored her as proficient. In 2.2, content knowledge, the rubric scored her as proficient. 2.3, communication, accomplished. 2.4, differentiation, we might not have seen that yet because I just showed a small clip. Accomplished. 2.5, monitor and adjust, she was proficient. For 3.1, classroom environment, accomplished. The rubric scored her as accomplished. That might have been hard to see in the rubric because our view was so limited. But for managing student behavior, she was scored as accomplished. And for classroom culture, she was scored as distinguished. I remember some of the evidence that I saw was, I don't know if you noticed that some of the students had pirate hats on, and they talked about the culture of learning that she had built in her classroom. So let's look real quick at a secondary one. I think this is going to be 7th grade.
Okay, if you take a look at your planner and the due dates, right? Today what I'm going to give you guys is another geometry packet. We're going to talk about the area of a circle today, and the homework will be the first page in that packet. You'll also get a problem of the week, which will be pretty simple, but it'll be fun. Okay, both of those, your due date, if you take a look over here, your geometry packet, I am going to see you guys again on Friday. It's an A day, okay? So on Friday, your geometry packet with just the first page done is due, okay? And then on Monday, I'll see you again and your problem of the week will be due. Okay, questions on what's coming up? Okay, I'm gonna tell you a little story here, and let me emphasize the word story, little story, okay? This is gonna be the story of a square, okay? I'm a square, okay? I am a square and I have 4 very sharp corners. All my sides are the same length. Each of my corner angles are 90 degrees, and they're called right angles. And that's the story of a square. Tells me a little bit about the square. Can you add something to my story? Money? Okay, I'm shaped like a box. Judah?
Right like a fox.
Okay, well, I like that creative flair to it. Let's think like shapes and figures and math stuff, okay? Alright, but you are sharp like a fox. Okay, roll. If I added all my angles, okay. All my angles, it equals 360 degrees. Gina? Okay, and quadrilateral means what? Okay, so I am also quadrilateral. You would pick a word I can't spell. Quadrilateral. Alright, I'll look it up later. Astrid.
I have parallel lines.
Okay, how many sets of parallel lines?
2.
Okay, and again, for parallel lines meaning if I extend these lines, they'll never touch, and if I extend these lines, they'll never touch. If I have parallel lines.
So it's like 3D.
Okay, if I'm 3D, do you know what I'm called?
Cube.
3D. 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 3 where I am. Okay. Do I have an area?
Yes, of course.
Okay, I have an area. And how do I know my area? Okay.
Let me tell you her scores in the dimensions 2.1 through 2.5 and 3.1 through 3.3. For achieving expectations, proficient. Content knowledge, proficient. Communication, proficient. Differentiation, proficient. In monitor and adjust, the rubric scored her as developing. Environment, proficient. Managing student behavior, proficient. And her classroom culture was accomplished. The main reason I picked those two lessons is because I wanted to point out that it is okay and quite normal to have proficient, maybe one developing, maybe an accomplished, maybe a distinguished. And to me, that is the beauty of the TTESS rubric, because it can really point to where can that teacher work to become a better teacher so that we can have the outcomes for our students that we want. It's not so general that overall, like we did, oh, she was proficient. It's more, it's very detailed. And so if I was this teacher's evaluator, we would start looking at monitoring and adjusting. We probably didn't see it in that little snippet, and how we could work on that. And to me, that is the best part of the rubric, is that there's just so many different dimensions that you can be scored on so that we can help you grow. Does that make sense? Does anybody have any questions about those videos? About the scorings that I mentioned? I do recommend to go play around on that website. Maybe watch a little bit more of the videos. Probably find your grade level or your subject, because there's everything you can imagine on there. And then look at the evidence that that evaluator used. So the post-conference comes, remember I said 10 days, within 10 days. We prefer quicker than that, but 10 days after you have the evaluation. So what do you think you would like at a post-conference? What do you want to hear? How could a post-conference help you grow? Talk to your neighbor real quick. What's something you would want at your post-conference? Yes.
Support.
You want some support?
You want to be supported. Your results may be great, may be proficient, may be developing, but despite whatever the results are, even if they're not great, you still want to feel supported and that person's there to help you.
Right. If the majority of your scores were accomplished, I would hope that you would get that same support and how you could continue to grow also. What would you not want? Who could just call out? What would you not want at a post-conference?
Scores with no explanations.
Yeah, hopefully your evaluator will have the evidence to support the scores. I agree. That would be very frustrating. Anything else? Yes.
I think as a program teacher for special ed, in my past, I've had a lot of like, oh, you're just doing so great and you're so good with those kids, and there's no like good, because it is a different thing. They come in and they're like, everyone is alive and way to go, instead of giving you like real feedback.
Right.
Because everyone can grow.
That's really good feedback for me, so thank you for that. No, that's excellent. I would think you wouldn't want a gotcha. I have done this long enough. I probably look really young to all of y'all, but I have been around a long time. And I remember when it was almost a gotcha, and you got just 45 minutes. And you got a good evaluation if you kept them engaged for 45 minutes and they were quiet. I'm so grateful that we do things differently now, and that we want to hear children talking, and we want to hear our children communicating with each other and with the teacher. So I want you to know that this is not a gotcha. It is for sure not a gotcha in CISD. Our administrators are committed to you. and committed to this process and committed to helping you grow. And I hope you see that all the way from the pre-conference to the post-conference. For me personally, as an evaluator, I want that post-conference to be a safe place where you can come and share how you felt about the evaluation. I want to get feedback from you. How did you feel? And you know what? 9 times out of 10, we're going to be aligned with where we feel like the growth needs to happen. This is what a post-conference will look like. During the introduction, your evaluator will probably say something like, probably tell you that you did a wonderful job. Give me your thoughts on the evaluation. How do you feel like it went? They want to hear your voice. And once they hear your voice, and y'all talk for just a little bit, they're going to give you what's called a reinforcement. They will give you one reinforcement. They will find an area that you were a rock star, above a rock star. You've just knocked it out of the park. And they are going to reinforce how strong you are in that area. And then they're going to give you one refinement. That's very important. One. They're not going to come to you and say, you really need to work with communication. You really need to work with knowledge of students, in your environment. They're not going to go down this list of everything that you need to work on. They're going to give you one refinement. For this one teacher, it was monitor and adjust. And that evaluator would probably say why they chose that refinement, and then they would make a plan on what they're going to do to address that refinement. And then they'll come back to it. It's not over because you've had that summative conference. There's walkthroughs to still happen, and that conversation can happen for the rest of the year of how that teacher is working on that one area of refinement. And it's definitely a conversation that happens at the summative meeting. Your evaluator will say, okay, remember back in October, I told you that we were going to work on, I wanted you to work on monitoring. Just talk to me about that. What does that look like? And they will gather evidence there at that summative meeting in April of how you address the refinement that they mentioned in October. Does that make sense? It's one of my favorite parts, is that you get to pick that one area that you would like to work on with that teacher. And then after the refinement, you'll go through all of those dimensions and see how you were, proficient, and they will present their evidence to you. So, here are our final thoughts on TTESS. Great teaching is the core of every quality education system. CISD prides itself on how we teach our kiddos. We are proud of what we do every day in our classrooms, and this TTESS system helps us do that. Research shows that there is no greater in-school factor than having an outstanding education in the classroom. Remember, it was developed by educators. It's research-based. The rubric is directly aligned to the standards, those 6 Texas teacher standards. And it's about giving you actionable feedback, things that you can take back into your classroom and work on with your students. It allows you to set goals, reach the goals, and just refine what you do. I was in the classroom for 28 years before I moved to being an administrator. And I would tell you, in my 28th year, I was still gathering feedback from my evaluator and trying to grow. I had not figured it out, yet. And so at every stage, at every year, this will help you grow. I wanted to ask at the beginning, who in here is a first-year teacher? Like, this is it. Y'all are like my favorite people in the world. I love first-year teachers. I love all of you, but I love first-year teachers. I love that you've chosen this career. And I hope that you're leaving today not being anxious or worried about this process, but knowing it's the next step to helping you grow and become a great teacher for those amazing kids that are about to walk into your classrooms. What does proficient mean? You're rock solid. You're a rock star teacher. There will be some necessary culture shifts to establish this mindset, that relationship that you need to build with your evaluator, and to have a year-long appraisal, not just a 45-minute appraisal, but for that growth that can happen the entire school year. Everyone in the school community is a public learner, and the ultimate goal, the reason we come together every single day, is for student achievement. There is the teachfortexas.org. I want you to remember that. I know you've got a lot to do. You've got to go set up those classrooms. You've got to look at those kids' names. You've got to meet the parents. You've got so much to do. But in the process of doing all that, do not forget about teachfortexas.org and go do a little bit of work. Go do a little bit of homework and look at some of those lessons. Look at some of those scorings and see if that helps you. Most of your learning is not going to come from me, unless you're one of those 6 back there. But it's going to come from your meetings that you have with your administrators. You'll be talking about this a lot more. So before we end, is there any questions that anybody has? Okay. Well, I will just stand down here if you think of something. I'm happy to stay and answer any questions that you have. Welcome to Coppell ISD. It is home. It is a wonderful place to be. We're so happy that you're here, and I wish you all just the very best school year.